धाम की जय, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, गंगा माई की जय, यमुना माई की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, तुलसी महारानी की जय, समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय, गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि बोल. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam this morning, third canto, 13th chapter, verse 36. We have it pulled up here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om,
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, so I will read this verse three times. We have two verses today, verse 36 and 37. So I'll read this three times and then we can do call and response. Sraktunda asit sruva ishanashayor idodare chamasa karnarandre prashitramasye grasane grahastute yacharvanam te bhagavan agnihotram. Sraktunda asit sruva ishanasayor idodare chamasa karnarandre prashitramasye grasane grahastute yacharvanam te bhagavan agnihotram. Sraktunda asit sruva ishanasayor idodare chamasa karnarandre prashitramasye grasane grahastute yacharvanam te bhagavan agnihotram. Prabhus.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Saktun asitassu ishanasayo ridodare tamsa karnarangare Rashitramasai grasini grahasatute yachvante bhagavan nigihotram. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Oh, you can go, Mother.
It's okay. Go, you go ahead.
You can go.
You go ahead, Mom.
Thank you. Sraktunda asit sru ishnasayor idodare chamsa karnarandare Rashitram asye grasane grahastute yachcharvanam te bhagavan agnihotraham. Hare Krishna.
Tunda asit sruva nasayo idador chamasa karnarandre prasitramasye grasane grahastute yascharvanam te bhagavan agnihotram. Hare Krishna.
Would anyone else like to recite? Okay, so we can do the word for word. Struck. Are we doing call and response here, Mother Shobarade, or?
No, no, Prabhu.
Okay. Struck, the plate for sacrifice. Tunde, on the tongue. Asit, there is. Sruvaha, another plate for sacrifice. Isha, O Lord. Nasayoh, of the nostrils. Ira, the plate for eating. Udare, in the belly. Chamasaha, another plate for sacrifices. Karna randre, in the holes of the ears. Prashitram, the plate called the Brahma plate. Asye, in the mouth. Grasane, in the throat. Grahaha, the plates known as soma plates. Tu, but. Te, your. Yat, that which. Charvaram, chewing. Te, your. Bhagavan, O my Lord. Agnihotram, is your eating through sacrificial fire. Translation. O Lord, your tongue is a plate of sacrifice. Your nostril is another plate of sacrifice. In your belly is the eating plate of sacrifice, and another plate of sacrifice is the holes of your ears. In your mouth is the Brahma plate of sacrifice. Your throat is a plate of sacrifice known as Soma, and whatever you chew is known as Agnihotra. Okay. Translation and purport. Let me back up. Purport. The Vedavadis say that there is nothing more than the Vedas and the performance of sacrifice mentioned in the Vedas. They have recently made a rule in their group to formally observe daily sacrifice. They simply ignite a small fire and offer something whimsically, but they do not strictly follow the sacrificial rules and regulations mentioned in the Vedas. It is understood that by regulation, there are different plates of sacrifice required, such as Srak, Sruva, Barhis, Chaturhotra, Idha, Chamasa, Prashitra, Graha, and Agnihotra. One cannot achieve the results of sacrifice unless one observes the strict regulations. In this age, there is practically no facility for performing sacrifices in strict discipline. Therefore, in this age of Kali, there is a stricture regarding such sacrifices. It is explicitly directed that one should perform Sankirtan Yagya and nothing more. The incarnation of the Supreme Lord is Yagyeshwara, and unless one has respect for the incarnation of the Lord, he cannot perfectly perform sacrifice. In other words, taking shelter of the Lord and rendering service unto him is the factual performance of all sacrifices, as explained herein. Different plates of sacrifice correspond to the different parts of the body of the Lord's incarnation. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto, it is explicitly directed that one should perform Sankirtan Yagya to please the Lord's incarnation as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This should be rigidly followed in order to achieve the result of Yagya performance. So I'll do the second verse and then we can speak. Dikshanujanmopasadah shirodharam tvam prayaniyo dayaniya dangshtraha jiva pravargyas tava shirshakam krato satyava satyam jitayo savohite. Diksha, okay. Diksha, initiation. Anujanma, spiritual birth or repeated incarnations. Upasadaha, three kinds of desires: relationship, activities, and ultimate goal. Shiraha dharam, the neck. Tvam, you. Prayaniya, after the result of initiation. Udayaniya, the last rite of desires. Dangshtraha, the tusks, Jiva, the tongue, Pravargyaha, prior activities, Tava, your, Shirshakam, head, Kratoha, of the sacrifice, Satya, fire without sacrifice, Avasatyam, fire of worship, Chittayaha, aggregate of all desires, Asavaha, life breath, He, certainly, Te, your. Translation. Moreover, O Lord, the repetition of your appearance is the desire for all kinds of initiation. Your neck is the place for 3 desires, and your tusks are the result of initiation and the end of all desires. Your tongue is the prior activities of initiation. Your head is the fire without sacrifice, as well as the fire of worship. And your living forces are the aggregate of all desires. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. I'm sorry. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dinabandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostute, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hari Priye. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Prabhus, we are here in the 3rd canto, and this chapter is the appearance of Lord Varahadev. Where we are is, let me pull up 36. So we've been talking about Lord Varaha appearing from Lord Brahma and the situation in the earth and the Lord appearing from Lord Brahma. Right now, the sages are glorifying Lord Varahadev in the choicest prayers. This part specifically is talking about comparing the Lord's body to the offering of sacrifice. And so there are different sacrifices in different ages, and Srila Prabhupada makes that clear here in the purport. Your tongue, so there's different plates of sacrifice required. This is referring to the Agnihotra, the fire sacrifice. And each age has its own yuga dharma, or the religious principle of that age to attain perfection. And fire sacrifice is that yuga dharma for Treta Yuga, which is the 2nd age. And here you see there's so many rules and regulations within that framework. There's Srila Prabhupada says there's different plates of sacrifice he gives them, such as Srak, Shruva, Barhis, Chaturhotra, Ida, Chamasa, Prashitra, Graha, and Agnihotra. These things have to be very precise. There's specific times, there's specific places, there's consideration of Varna. Varnashram is important here. There's certain people, Brahmanas, who are qualified to perform this. There's certain places that are needed. And most of all, it's time. These things are very, very lengthy, and they require specific ingredients to offer in the sacrificial fire. And so this was something that was available to people and was very common in Treta Yuga because Their lives were very long. They had time to perform this. We see in Kali Yuga in Srimad Bhagavatam it's described the sages of Naimisharanya, right? They were performing 1,000-year long sacrifice. And what was the reason for that? They said we want to delay the onset of Kali Yuga as long as possible. And we're performing this sacrifice for the benefit of mankind. May the deleterious effects of Kali Yuga not affect us. Let's delay the onset of it. So they did so in the way that they knew, which was from the previous age. And so they performed the sacrifice, and you see in Bhagavatam, Sutta Goswami comes, right? Sutta Goswami makes his appearance, and he's like, "What's going on here?" And Shonaka Rishi was head of the sages of Naimisharanya performing the sacrifice. And he said, we're trying to delay the onset of Kali Yuga. We're performing this 1,000-year sacrifice. But Sutta Goswami, what's happening here is we're not really seeing any results. We see one result, and that's that our faces are becoming blackened by the smoke from this fire. That's the only result that we see. And so Kali Yuga is not meant for fire sacrifices. They're very lengthy. There's many rules required for that. And they're generally performed for some fruitive result. Srila Prabhupada refers to in the purport here about the Vedavadis. So these are people who want to follow the Vedas, especially the Rig Veda talks about the rituals that we can offer in order to get some fruitive result. And there's details in the mantras and the way that you have to pronounce them and the meters and the tones and the different mudras and hand gesticulations that you perform in order to do this. And so he says that Srila Prabhupada says they've recently made a rule in their group to formally observe daily sacrifice, simply ignite a small fire. They do so whimsically. They don't follow the sacrificial rules and regulations. And other places, Srila Prabhupada says that, they use whatever ingredients they have. They pour oil instead of ghee, and they're chanting the mantras half in Hindi and half in Sanskrit. And so these things are Krishna's bhava grahi janardana. He takes the emotion, the bhava in which one offers prayer. These elaborate sacrifices are not required. Actually, the Yuga Dharma in this age, as Srila Prabhupada says, is Sankirtan. To have that faith that simply by chanting the holy name and surrendering in love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sufficient. There's no disqualification. There's no consideration of caste, color, creed, religion, background, gender identification. These things don't matter because our relationship with Krishna through the holy name surpasses all of that. There's no material consideration barring us from performing the Sankirtan Yajna. And that's the benefit of this age of Kali. And so we see that each yuga has its specialty. So Satya Yuga, which is governed by the mode of goodness, people are truthful, honest, clean, they live long lives and there's spiritual purity. The means in that age is meditation, smaranam. They can meditate, sit in yogic poses for centuries, millennia, And then the next age is Treta Yuga. And Treta Yuga is these fire sacrifices. And these fire sacrifices, like is mentioned here, require so many rules. There's so many rules and regulations. And then the next stage is Dwapara Yuga. They have fancy, big, elaborate temples and great ceremonies and rituals for deity worship. And here we are in Kali Yuga, where all of that is not possible. Things are so degraded, our condition we can see around the world today is very much in a precarious situation. So we take shelter of the Lord in the most beneficial, in the most merciful form, which is through his name. Kali Kali Nam Rup Krishna Avatar, it says in Chaitanya Charitamrita. In this age of Kali, Krishna takes the form of his holy name and is present to anyone and everyone, regardless of whatever situation. There's no consideration of varnashram. There's no consideration of time, place, and circumstance. One can always chant the holy name. Yet again, as Srila Prabhupada sees this fire sacrifice is important, people are still performing it because they have some attachment to that. For some, it's just because of custom. For some, it's because they want to attain some result. And it reminds me of the example during the opening of the Krishna Balaram Mandir temple in Vrindavan, I think 1975. And so Srila Prabhupada invited or had invited these Yagyik Brahmanas, and they performed multiple days, I believe it was 3 days of elaborate fire sacrifices for the installation of the deities in the opening of this temple. And the disciples were wondering, like, what is this? Like, Srila Prabhupada gave us such a simple rule for deity installation and for opening the temples, and it was just accompanied by the holy name. And so why are we inviting all these people and having all these elaborate sacrifices? We've never seen anything like this before. And they finally asked, and Srila Prabhupada said, I'm doing this so people will think that something happened, because people are so accustomed to these fire sacrifices. He's like, I'm doing it so people don't think that this is just a temple for show, that this is we're presenting the authentic thing. But the real installation of the deity is the chanting of the holy name, the kirtan. And when a pure devotee glances at that deity form, he instills that the spirit, the supreme personality of Godhead within that form made of the elements. And so that's a very special thing. So that's the Yuga Dharma in each of these ages. And another thing is Sutta Goswami is personally present. So there's many scenes, many layers in the Bhagavatam. So here it's talking about Sutta Goswami. Vidura is asking questions to Maitreya Rishi. And then the pastimes of Lord Varahadev are described here. But when Sutta Goswami comes to the assembly of Shonak Rishi, when the sages of Naimisharanya were performing the sacrifice, he was personally present when Shukadev Goswami recited the Bhagavatam to Parikshit. So he had attained all this information that was there in the whole Bhagavatam, and he was able to relay that. Time's a little short. We haven't spoken about the second verse, but there's Burijan Prabhu has a book called Unveiling His Lotus Feet. There's not so much commentary on these two verses from our acharyas, and the purports are kind of short. But here's some from our acharyas. I want to just read a few sentences here. Seeing Lord Varaha, the sages glorified him as the personified Vedas, and as the one whose form is worshipped through Vedic sacrifice. How can the Lord be realized? Their answer was clear. The Lord can be realized only when one's mind is purified of material contamination. It is purity that allows one to understand God, regardless of the form in which the Lord chooses to appear. It is purity that allows one his merciful association. Therefore, one should offer Krishna service with a pure heart, with sincerity, affection, and freedom from selfish motivation. Such pure service will inspire Krishna to supply one with the intelligence and ability to make further progress in devotion. The sages then describe the Lord's beauty as he stood with the earth upon his tusks, comparing his splendor to the splendor of a great mountain decorated with clouds. The sages also describe Lord Varaha as the Lord of Vedic sacrifices, the purpose of which are to worship and please God. And so that's really important. People may perform sacrifices, and sometimes we do perform these fire sacrifices in ISKCON, in the ISKCON institution. This is just because there's a Yuga Dharma doesn't mean the other dharmas are not performed. But it means that the holy name in Kali Yuga, the holy name has to be accompanied by every ritual. We see fire sacrifices in our temples and at a time of initiation and different things, but it's always accompanied by Harinam. Harinam is the main thing. There's always kirtan accompanying it. And so the purpose of the sacrifice is to please God. If we're not doing it with the motivation to please God, then it becomes like an ordinary affair, or it becomes transactional dharma, meaning we're doing something to get something in result. Bhakti devotional service means anya bilashita shunyam, jnana karma dhyanavritam. Rupa Goswami says in his famous verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And that's actually the Paribhasya Sutra, it's called. That's the foundational verse upon which the entire book, the Nectar of Devotion, and all the writings of Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami received this information, this knowledge from Lord Chaitanya himself. And so that says, Jnana Karmadina, that bhakti is devotional service, that there's no other anya abhilasha, there's no other desire but to please God, but to serve Krishna. It's free of jnana, it's free of karma. Bhakti uttama, that's uttama bhakti, that's the highest form of devotional service. And so when we perform these I was saying, yeah, we do perform these sacrifices, but they're accompanied by the holy name always. And we do deity worship, but deity worship is accompanied by chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. We do perform meditation, but we meditate on the holy name. That's our japa. We have our daily ritual, our daily quota. We chant 16 rounds and we meditate on Krishna. and we're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. So all of the dharmas of the previous ages are included within the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in this age of Kali. And that reminds me also in terms of saying, the fire sacrifice is not the means of liberation in the age of Kali. In Radhakund, in Vrindavan, the devotees of Vrindavan have a spontaneous attraction to Krishna in the most intimate way. And they have such reliance and surrender and love for Krishna that they have no other shelter, and especially in the holy name. There was an initiation ceremony happening a couple years ago, I remember, in Vrindavan, in Radhakund, by ISKCON Guru, and they were performing it right there at Radhakund in front of the lake. And so they lit the fire sacrifice because we do that at time of Harinam initiation. And the local residents of Radhakund said, please don't do that here. This is Radhakund, only holy name. Have faith in the holy name. There's no need to perform fire sacrifice. So that reminded me that, we should have implicit faith that Krishna can deliver anyone and allow anyone to attain the supreme perfection through this chanting. And then Srila Prabhupada mentions here the 11th canto, and that's a beautiful verse. What verse is that? 11, 532. Let me pull that up. That's the verse, Krishna Varnam Tvishakrishnam Sangopangasta Parshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Praya Yajanti Hi Sumedhasaha. That means those in Kali Yuga, those who have Sumedhasaha. Sumedhasa, Meda means intelligence, Su means very. So those who are exceptionally intelligent, those who have sufficient brain substance, as Srila Prabhupada would call it, they're performing the Yuga Dharma to the Yagya Purusha. Purusha means the supreme person, and Yagya is a sacrifice. So the Yagya Purusha in this age is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In this age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the names of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. And so Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken 5,000 years ago, and Lord Chaitanya appeared just 500 years ago. So his advent was discussed, spoken, and predicted in the Srimad Bhagavad and in various literatures. In the Mahabharata, it's described in the Mundaka Upanishad. In so many places in scripture, it speaks about the advent of Lord Chaitanya far millennia before he appeared. And so here in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's saying, and I believe this is Narada Muni teaching, speaking here. He's saying, and Srila Prabhupada's referring to this verse, that in this age, weapons don't work because when the Lord comes, sometimes he annihilates the demons. And this age, virtually everyone is a demon. In terms of our mind, within our own mind, we have our own demons that we battle. And so if the Lord came we would all be disqualified, we'd all be annihilated. And so what is the weapon in this age of Kali? This verse says, Sango Pangastra Parshadam. He comes with his astra. Astra means weapon. But what is that weapon? Sango Panga and Parshada. Parshada means confidential companions, and Upanga, servants and associates. So that's Panchatattva and their associates. Lord Chaitanya comes with his associates, and he's freely giving the holy name. There's no restrictions. There's no consideration of varnashram. To perform fire sacrifices, one needs so many pure ingredients, and the earth itself is being polluted so much in this age. We don't even have the offerings into the sacrifices. Srila Prabhupada mentioned this also. He said Ayurveda is based on acquiring these substances from the earth, but the earth is so polluted that we don't even produce these things anymore. Everything is contaminated. So we take shelter of Krishna in the Sankirtan Yagya. Kirtan means to glorify Krishna. And Sankirtan means Samyak Kirtan, full Kirtan. That means along with others. Srila Prabhupada translated as congregational chanting. And it means coming together. It means harmonizing our differences. It means coming together for a greater purpose, glorifying Krishna. And that's the perfection of our existence. Those who have that Medasaha, Sumedhasaha, will join. If we open our hearts and really get to the essence of what we're practicing and embody the essence of what it means to perform Sankirtan, then anyone with sumedasa, anyone with sufficient intelligence will gladly join us. But we have to be an expression, we have to be an example of that love. We have to show that in our example. Oftentimes it says preaching means you should always be preaching, but you should sometimes be speaking. So our example speaks louder than our words. Sometimes, in the course of daily life, we associate with so many people who are, we would say, quote unquote, non-devotees, but if we're able to show our example and that we come together and we glorify God, then people will naturally be inclined to be attracted. And that's what it means. We say in ISKCON, oh, let's go out on Sankirtan. Go out on Sankirtan means one, chanting the holy name, but chanting the holy name, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who's the initiating spiritual master of our Srila Prabhupada, he introduces the concept of Brihat Mridanga. Mridanga is the drum that we use to glorify Krishna in Kirtan. Brihat Mridanga, he says, is the printing press. So printing books, he emphasized this so much, and Srila Prabhupada emphasized perhaps more than anything else is book distribution. Why? Because the transcendental knowledge is there. The information is there that everyone is welcome and everyone is welcome to chant the holy name and participate in this Yuga Dharma, in this Dharma for this Kali Yuga. Elsewhere in Bhagavatam it says, Kalir doshanidhi rajan ashtihiya ko mahan guna, kirtanadeva krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajit. Saying, O king, Kali doshanidhi, Kali Yuga is a nidhi, an ocean of dosha, of faults. There's so many faults. Ashtiyak mahan guna, but there's one maha, great guna, quality. Kirtanadeva krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajit. By doing the glorification, the kirtan of Krishna, mukta sangha, one attains the highest realm of liberation simply by surrendering to Krishna through his holy name. No need for anything else. No need to worry about these externals and these rituals and these sacrifices. That's the specialty of Kali Yuga. And so that's what it means, Sankirtan. The Brihat Mridanga Bhakti Siddhanta says, print books and allow everyone to come. And so in every age, there's, books are important, but we have social media, we have so many different technologies available to us these days. And so what Sankirtan means is to utilize everything in the service of Krishna. Rupa Goswami uses the principle of Yukta Vairagya. He says, and in Nectar of Instruction, it says, Atyahara Prayasascha. So those who are overly attached to following the rules and regulations in terms of what scripture says, just for the sake of following the rules and regulations, that is an impediment to devotional service. So we should use everything in the service of Krishna. We shouldn't be attached to anything just for the sake of the rule. We should be able to use everything for the Sankirtan movement. And that means utilizing all of our resources, coming together, using innovative techniques, and welcoming everyone to this family. It's said that Srila Prabhupada built a house in which the whole world can live. Elsewhere, it says that Lord Chaitanya brought the place of worship outside of, there was a lot of Muslim people at that time in East Bengal and West Bengal with the words we use today. And so he said, we brought the place of worship outside of the mosques, outside of the temples, into the streets. So the Sankirtan Yagya is a street religion, it says in some places. Get out to the streets, there's no restriction, and you chant the holy name and be absorbed in love of God and share it with everyone. And that's the real purport of and Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll just wrap up here by saying Srimad Bhagavatam is the perfect scripture for that. It's described again and again through every canto that they're surrendering to Krishna, loving Krishna through the Sankirtan is the ultimate perfection of our existence. It talks about fire sacrifice here, but they're not recommending we do sacrifice. It's giving a recap of what's happening in this particular time in the yagyas and the fire sacrifices, but it's not recommending we do it. But throughout Bhagavatam, it's describing that we should perform kirtan. So that's all I have. Thank you, Prabhus. We're wrapping up here 8:30. If anyone has any comments, corrections, questions, please share that.
Very nice class, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Amitabh Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for joining this list of speakers. I think what I was focusing on what you said today is having faith in that holy name. Um, there was a movie I had watched, and it says we always say, be patient, be compassionate, be this, be that, or we pray to Krishna or to whichever God people are praying to and say, please give me patience, please give me compassion. What he gives us is opportunities. He cannot pour compassion in a cup and give us so that we can drink it and become compassionate. He gives us opportunities to practice compassion, practice patience, practice faith. So whenever there is that temptation, fire sacrifice, yajna, and this will, arti plates, just go, let's, circle a plate around Krishna, and then we get what we get. To fight that and have faith in the holy name and say, I'm going to just chant, and that is just as powerful. I remember once when Guru Maharaj was giving initiation, especially during COVID, fire sacrifices couldn't happen, or initiations were happening over Zoom. There was this feeling that, oh, you know what, this is Zoom, this is not as good as in person. And Guru Maharaj said, no, it is. And your initiation will be via Zoom. And in that way, we practice what we are actually saying. We have to practice it. We say it. Nobody says anything wrong. We say the right things. Do we practice the right thing? And I think that's where that faith is something we have to hold on to and rely on to get us through these periods of doubt, periods of getting distracted, and bring us back to what is actually important.
Yeah,
Thank
that's so
you.
beautiful, Mansi. That's such an important part. I didn't realize that's how initiations were happening, but that's exactly what I was referring to. Having that faith. Sometimes we want to do this because we want to feel like something's happening, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, something happened. I put this into the fire. I saw the fire. I got something tangible. But the holy name is the most tangible thing we can ever rely on, and
Yes.
that everything is there. So that's beautiful that Vaisheshika Prabhu did that, and
Yes.
wonderful. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.